The director for the Anza College's Office of Equity, Social Justice, and Multicultural Education has been allegedly harassed for questioning the school's woke policies. Earlier this week, I spoke to Professor Tabia Lee to hear her story. Dr. Lee, welcome and thank you for joining me today. So I may be a little bit old school here, but when I was going to college some 30 years ago, I don't remember any office on campus called Office of Equity and Social Justice. I mean, the closest I can think of is the Department of Education or Psychology. Is this a new trend that every community college, at least in California, had to have an office like that?
It seems to be a unique trend, not just in California, but nationally, where, in many, especially public universities and colleges, and even private universities and colleges, there's now these positions of diversity, equity, inclusion officer, chief diversity officer. Like if I've done a Google search recently, which I have because I'm job seeking at the moment, I see these positions in so many places throughout education now.
So you have served as a director of this office for Anza College since 2021. Could you tell us a little bit more about the qualification and job description for a position that seems almost like to have more to do with ideology, politics, and racism than public education?
Yes, so this is a faculty director position, and it was attractive to me because I'm a lifelong teacher and educator, and one of the primary job duties was to promote inclusion throughout the campus. And when I read that, inclusion has been something that I've always been passionate about in my teaching, and I said, wow, this is an opportunity to work with the whole community of people, to advance what seemed to me to be very noble aims.
So could you help us to fill the gap from 2021 to now? You were told that your contract wouldn't be renewed after June, and that you were even called a white supremacist on campus. So what exactly happened there?
This was actually, David, at the very beginning that this took place. So as I came on to De Anza in this role, I wanted to reach out to people and to have conversations with them. And one of those early conversations was with a staff member in my office who told me that my position belonged to them and they were a finalist for it. And a couple of weeks later, that same person was the person who told me that as I was talking to the team, I made a Google Doc and I said, we can all set agenda there. We're all editors. Maybe we can put topics to talk about in our meetings and, identify projects to work on. And that person that told me their job should belong to them told me, stop what you're doing right now. And I kind of just froze, and they said, what you're doing is you're white speaking and you're white splaining. And he said, you're being transactional, you're supporting white supremacy. And the way that landed on me, I felt very bad because I had never heard those terms before and everything I've known about white supremacy. So I need to say that where I grew up in Lodi, which is here in California. It's a small town. I was born in Stockton, grew up in Lodi. So I had actual experiences growing up in Lodi with neo-Nazis and people who were members of the KKK, actual white supremacists. And so when he called me that, it felt bad. And I said, please don't do that. But my whole team was there and they all looked at me disapproving. And as I just went on to go to workshops with those same individuals who were in that meeting and who looked at me very disapprovingly, and the person who said that I was white speaking and white splaining, I saw they kept putting up a slide over and over again. And it said white supremacy culture. And it had things like being on time, being objective, the written word, all of these other characteristics that you generally would associate with being successful or being in the academic world, or, that I had seen as that, but they were calling it white supremacy culture. And they used this slide over and over again. And one time it had a citation on it, and I went to find who was that and what they were saying. And that's when I discovered that they were working from a very different understanding of white supremacy, understanding of how people are racialized. I mean, as a black woman, no one's ever in my life told me that I'm a white supremacist. So that was when and this was within the first couple of weeks, David. It wasn't like months went by and disagreements, like this was instant. And then other things started happening that, again, this idea of whiteness, frankly, they would call it decentering whiteness, would come up again and again in conversation. And I was always a little surprised. And, I was the odd person out because I wasn't thinking that way. But when it comes to serving our students in the community, we rally around some points that we have in common, even if we seem real different. But that wasn't a welcome way of doing the work once I got in to do it because of this dominant idea around, just being very racialized and wanting to promote divisions around that.
So what's your next step? Do you still want to work in the field of equity and social justice?
Yes, so I'm still committed to public education. So I am on the job search, looking for educational advocacy, type work, leadership work. I think it's important that we have leadership, especially around teacher development and professional development, so that we can have more humanistic and critical thinking involved. And all those things that are important that really contribute to society and democracy and America and all those things that we stand for, and that we should stand for as public schools. Hopefully there's institutions out there still where freedom of expression and speech and academic freedom are still highly, held values, and critical thinking. That's a place that I would really work well in, and those are the kinds of things that I'm looking forward to for the future, and just continuing to raise awareness so the public knows what's happening on the taxpayers' dollars. That's so important to me.
All right, Dr. Lee, thank you for joining us today. We reached out to the Anza College for a comment, and its public affairs office says, quote, "Thank you for writing to us. Foothill De Anza Community College District has an obligation to protect the privacy in personnel matters. Without commenting on any specific matter, we can share that faculty members have comprehensive due process and the appeal rights both under the law and negotiated through their bargaining unit."